Imagine yourself alone in a dark forest, where every sound is amplified by the heavy silence around you, where every shadow seems to move, every breath of wind whispers forgotten secrets. What if you weren't truly alone? Tonight, I'm taking you to remote places, where nature itself seems to rebel against man. 3 stories, all based on true events, that will plunge you into the unknown, where horror lurks behind every tree and every step in the dark. These stories were lived by hikers, campers, and adventurers who, one day, found themselves confronted with the unthinkable. The wilderness isn't just a place of rugged beauty, it's also a place where it's easy to lose your way, where you can encounter unexplained phenomena, where solitude can destroy your spirit. Forests, mountains, remote lakes, these places possess a terrifying power. Nature, in all its majesty, hides mysteries that even science can't explain. Disappearances without a trace, encounters with unknown entities, phenomena as strange as they are disturbing. Today, we'll explore these stories that defy logic and remind us that, in these wild places, there are forces beyond our comprehension. Prepare yourself, because what awaits you may well make you question everything you thought you knew about nature. First story: a mysterious disappearance. In the heart of the Misty Mountains region, a remote national park, a place where nature seems to have taken over, lies a vast forest. Far from the beaten track, the air is saturated with mystery and legend. The treetops, always bathed in mist, conceal the secrets of the soil, and the surrounding mountains seem to keep silent watch. Hikers who venture here often say that time seems to expand. The forest is dense, the trails rare, and the animals, those you encounter, are never the ones you expected. If you take a moment to observe, you can see footprints that seem to disappear over time, as if the forest itself were erasing them. It is here, in this forgotten corner of the world, that the story of a tragic disappearance will unfold, a disappearance that will have neither answer nor conclusion. The protagonist, 350 words. Lucas is a 29-year-old with a passion for nature and the great outdoors. He has spent the last decade exploring mountains, trekking, and camping alone in remote locations. What he seeks isn't the exciting adventure of big cities, but the soothing solitude of nature, far from the gaze of others, far from civilization. He's an experienced hiker, always well prepared and aware of the risks. He knows first aid, compass navigation, and has often spent nights under the stars. That morning, he heads to the Misty Mountains, a place he's always wanted to explore, but never had the chance to explore in depth. The national park, still relatively uncrowded, is renowned for its breathtaking landscapes, but also for its mysteries. Lucas, despite the rumors and warnings from locals, is excited by the idea of discovering a new, untouched, unknown area. His mission is simple: spend a few days alone, test his limits, and capture the raw beauty of nature. He's got it all planned out. But what he didn't anticipate was that he'd be confronted with something far greater than himself, something neither his preparation nor his experience could have anticipated. The first signs of trouble appear on the second night. After a long day of walking, Lucas sets up camp near a small stream. The sky is clear, and he feels at one with his surroundings. He spends the evening stargazing, wondering why these mountains are so rarely visited. The idea that nature here might hold something unexplored, something secret, intrigues him. As night falls, the sounds of the forest seem louder. A light breeze rustles the leaves on the trees. But that's not what bothers Lucas. Rather, it's a strange sound, like a distant whisper. He strains his ears. At first, He thinks of animals, nocturnal creatures, but the sound seems too rhythmic, almost like a human whisper. He shakes his head, thinking it's a hallucination caused by fatigue. He decides to check around the camp. He stands up, grabs his headlamp, and heads towards the bushes behind him. Nothing. No sign of animals. No trace of humans. Yet the strange sensation persists, as if invisible eyes are watching him. The mist spreading across the valley seems to be thickening, slowly engulfing the edges of his small camp. The next day, he notices fresh footprints near the stream. They're unlike anything he's ever seen before. Human footsteps, but strangely distorted, as if the person had been walking barefoot over rough terrain. They lead straight into the dense forest, then abruptly stop, as if the person had vanished into nothingness. Lucas feels unsettled, but dismisses the thought, telling himself it's probably just an illusion of light or an animal. But the further he advances into the forest, the more unusual events become. An oppressive silence descends, almost palpable. The mist is thicker and seems to move erratically. The birds, which should be plentiful at this time of year, have disappeared. Even the sounds of insects have died away. Lucas feels as if he's walking into another time, another world. The sensations of unease multiply. Branches seem to break behind him, but when he turns around, he sees nothing. Shadows quickly disappear between the trees, too fast to be animals. Every corner of the forest seems more threatening than the last. The climax. On the third day, Lucas decides to go further, to push his limits. He has a hunch he's close to something important, something that could explain the strange events. He follows a trail on the ground, a fresh track he spotted near an old oak tree. After a few hours, he arrives in a strange clearing, a place where the mist is denser, where the trees form an almost perfect circle. He steps forward and, to his surprise, discovers a sort of ancient temple, in ruins, almost hidden beneath the roots of giant trees. The silence is total, as if the air itself has stopped breathing. As he approaches the ancient stones, a sudden icy wind blows, extinguishing his lamp. In the darkness, a shape escapes from behind a tree, a swift movement, a blurred silhouette. Lucas freezes, his heart pounding. He tries to call out to her, but her voice is lost in the wind. The shape disappears into the mist, and Lucas decides to follow it, pushing his instincts beyond caution. But the further he advances, the stranger the terrain becomes, almost unreal. The trees seem to close in around him, the mist thickens, and he loses all sense of direction. He looks around, and that's when he realizes. He no longer recognizes anything. The camp, the road, everything is gone. Suddenly, an icy hand landed on his shoulder. The conclusion, 150 words. The rangers found no trace of Lucas. The search lasted several days, but the forest seemed to hold its secrets. Residents of nearby villages whisper ancient tales of a guardian of the forest, an entity that lures those who dare to venture too far. There are rumors of similar disappearances, of people who have entered this part of the misty mountains and never returned. Even today, Lucas's whereabouts have never been found. The park has become more popular, but a strange unease persists around the forest. People who dare venture there report sometimes hearing strange noises, whispers bordering on the incomprehensible. What really happened to Lucas? Was he the victim of an accident, or does the forest hide another kind of danger, a danger older than time itself? After this first story, in which a mysterious disappearance leaves behind more questions than answers, anxiety mounts. Can this kind of event really be explained? Or are we facing something much darker, something beyond human comprehension? Now imagine that palpable tension transforming into a presence, something invisible but omnipresent, watching you, following you, without ever showing itself. What would you do if you felt a malevolent force lurking around you, in the solitude of an even more remote forest? In the second story, we delve even deeper into the forest, where shadows take shape, and every sound seems to be a prelude to the unknown. Prepare to discover the entity that might be behind this terror. Second story, the entity in the forest. The forest of Argelix, located on the edge of the village of Elmbrook, is a place shrouded in mystery. This is no ordinary forest, but a dense, silent, and eerie expanse. The trees, centuries-old oaks and firs, form an impenetrable ceiling, barely letting daylight through. The mist seems to cling to the trunks and rarely dissipates, giving the place an unearthly atmosphere. Sounds are muffled, as if the forest itself absorbed the slightest noise. No birds sing here, and the few animals that wander through seem to flee as soon as one approaches. The inhabitants of the neighboring village speak of this forest with fear and respect, but few dare to explore it beyond the first trails. Those who venture there on long expeditions rarely return without having felt something abnormal. It is not simply loneliness, but the sensation that something else, something older and more intangible, is watching them. Clara and Max are two longtime friends with a passion for hiking and nature. Clara is a professional photographer specializing in wild landscapes, and Max is a writer seeking new inspiration for his next novel. Both are seeking solitude, far from modern distractions, to spend a weekend exploring the depths of the Argelix forest, searching for uncharted locations for their respective projects. They plan to camp in a secluded corner of the forest, several hours' walk from the main trail. Clara, with her camera and equipment, hopes to capture the forest's unique atmosphere, while Max, rather skeptical, muddled. There's no turning back. Hugo starts running, aimlessly, fleeing the horror of what he's just seen. The forest around him seems to close in, the trees leaning toward him, as if trying to catch him. The marshy ground pulls him along, each step becoming heavier than the last. Footsteps follow him, fast, almost synchronized with his own, but he doesn't dare turn around. The whispers in the forest intensify, mingling with unfamiliar voices, laughter, and sighs. He trips over a root and falls into a ditch, landing on the soggy ground. The sky above him darkens, like a veil of darkness covering it. A silhouette then appears before him, an indistinct form, but terrifyingly real. A human figure, or what's left of it, covered in mud, leaves, and vines. Its face is blurred, distorted, but its eyes, those eyes are Hugo's. A version of himself, another Hugo, a distorted mirror. Before he can even comprehend, the figure reaches out towards him, pulling him in, sucking him in, like a bottomless abyss. Hugo screams, but no sound comes out of his throat. His legs are paralyzed. He feels his strength leaving him. The next day, hikers found Hugo's camp, intact, except that the tent was empty. No sign of a struggle, just an abandoned bag and tracks leading to the lake. But these tracks abruptly stopped, as if Hugo had vanished into thin air. The police search the area, but find no further trace of him, not even of his belongings. Everything is erased, as if the forest itself had swallowed Hugo. The village elders, however, whisper that the lake, like a mirror, doesn't always reflect what you expect. Sometimes it reveals truths you don't want to see. Some say that Hugo has joined the water, that he is now one with the lake. Others believe that it is the entity, the presence under the mirror, who took it, like so many others before him. But whatever the case, Mirror Lake has a new legend to tell, and it never shows everything it knows. General conclusion. Through these 3 stories, we entered territories where danger comes not only from wild animals or extreme conditions, but from a nature itself imbued with unfathomable mysteries. The first story introduced us to an inexplicable disappearance, a hiker lost without a trace, a mystery that even the authorities were unable to solve. The second story immersed the viewer in a forest where invisible presences lurk, an entity that the protagonists were never able to identify but which gave rise to an irrepressible fear. And finally, in the third story, we explored a place where nature itself seems to become the enemy, rejecting a solitary walker who never had the chance to return home. These stories, though real, defy all rational explanations. They remind us that nature, with all its beauty and majesty, can also be the scene of strange and disturbing events. When we venture into these wild and remote places, far from any civilization, we find ourselves faced with an imposed solitude, where we become vulnerable to invisible, elusive forces. Nature does not forgive ignorance or arrogance. It reminds us that, despite our progress, there are aspects of the world that escape our understanding, mysteries we can only touch upon. The unknown, isolation, and ambiguity of these environments arouse a deep fear in each of us. After all, what could lurk in these places where civilization does not venture, where man is a mere visitor, fragile and ephemeral? Every creaking branch, every strange noise in the wind could conceal a disturbing truth. And even if we try to rationalize our fears, there are phenomena that science may never be able to explain. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had a bizarre or unexplainable experience in nature? Have you had a moment where you felt watched or lost in a place where the invisible seems to take shape? Share your stories in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more tales as frightening as they are fascinating. Because, who knows, maybe one day it will be your story that completes this mystery. The forest's unique atmosphere, while Max, rather skeptical of local myths, is looking for a setting for a story he wants to write about strange occurrences. They've heard the rumors, of course, stories of disappearances and invisible creatures, but they're both convinced they're just legends meant to scare travelers. The morning of their arrival, they begin to delve into the forest. The trees crowd around them, and the daylight becomes increasingly diffuse. A sense of eerie calm gradually overwhelms them, but they continue forward, each thinking of their own creative quest. However, the forest seems anything but welcoming. The silence is almost oppressive, broken only by the rustling of leaves beneath their feet. Every sound seems amplified in this emptiness, yet the atmosphere remains calm, almost too calm. The first sign that something strange is happening appears as night falls. As they pitch their tent and settle around the fire, Clara notices shadows moving around the edge of their camp. At first, she attributes this to the illusion of firelight, but the movements are too clear and regular to be simple shadow play. She mentions this to Max, but he just smiles and shakes his head, thinking it's simply fatigue playing tricks on Clara. However, the phenomena are becoming more and more evident. Strange noises begin to be heard around the camp. At first, it's the sound of branches cracking, but then it gets stranger. Rapid rustling, as if something were moving through the bushes with astonishing agility. This isn't just any animal, in Max's opinion, and it doesn't resemble the usual forest fauna at all. Clara,
worried, gets up to go check. She ventures a little beyond the camp, but just as she turns to call Max, she freezes. A figure, barely perceptible in the thick mist, moves furtively between the trees. There is no sound, just the figure slipping quickly away and disappearing into the darkness of the forest. Clara, her heart pounding, runs towards the fire, but Max, implacable, tells her there is nothing there. Yet her worried look betrays her thoughts. He too is beginning to doubt. Night draws on, and the two friends try to sleep. But the silence is eerie. No natural sound breaks the stillness of the forest. The mist is dense, almost tangible, and all around, the landscape seems to be transforming into some kind of bizarre dream. Clara struggles to fall asleep, her thoughts tormented by the feeling that something is prowling around the tent. In the distance, a heart-rending scream is heard, broken by the echo of the forest. Clara jumps, but Max remains frozen, looking pale, as if the scream comes from his own nightmares. He can't tell if the cry is human or animal. The cold bites harder, and a sense of imminent danger begins to take hold of them. The next morning, the tension is palpable. Clara and Max decide to leave their camp and follow an old trail they had spotted on their map. They walk in a determined direction, but the further they go, the stranger the forest becomes. The trees seem to close in around them, and every movement of the mist seems more controlled, as if an invisible being is guiding them. The strange noises start again, but this time, they're louder. Scratching, heavy breathing, and even almost intelligible whispers seem to creep into the air. Max, once skeptical, begins to feel a visceral fear. He wonders if he missed something the day before, a detail they might have overlooked, but the inexplicable seeps into his thoughts. Clara, for her part, is obsessed with the idea of an invisible presence, something intangible but undeniably there, following them. When they arrive at a small clearing, they stop, shocked. On the ground, a massive, strange footprint is visible, as if something gigantic had just passed by. The footprint is fresh, almost burning. They look at each other, both dizzy. Paranoia sets in. Every noise becomes threatening. Clara feels watched, even when she turns around, convinced that something is right behind her, peering through the mist. She suggests returning to camp, but Max dissuades her, too curious to discover what awaits them. Arriving at a new clearing, they stop in horror. There, before them, stands a gigantic creature, its silhouette silhouetted against the mist. It is a humanoid form, but of immeasurable size, almost deformed, with overlong limbs and a head that is too large. Its eyes shine with an eerie glow, like dead stars. But what is most striking is its lack of true form. The creature seems to change every moment, distorting and rearranging itself into an indescribable mass. Max and Clara stand frozen, their hearts pounding. They can't move. The creature emits a noise, an incomprehensible whisper, a vibration in the air that seems to reach their very insides. As the creature advances toward them, the air becomes heavier, more suffocating, as if the entire forest itself is breathing in sync with this entity.